Welcome to Perspective and Potential, where we uncover new ways to see the world and tap into the incredible potential within each of us. I'm Abigail Strait, joined by my co host and mother, Gwen Fund. Together, we'll explore ideas, stories, and strategies designed to help you grow, shift your perspective, and embrace a more complete version of yourself. Whether you're ready for a big transformation or simply curious about the small steps you can take today, our goal is to inspire, encourage, and support you on your journey. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can check us out at perspectiveandpotential.com. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in and see where a new perspective might take you. Today, we're diving into one of the most important and rewarding roles, parenting. How do early childhood experiences influence a child's emotional development? What impact do parenting styles have on long-term well-being? And how can we, as parents, create a nurturing environment that fosters confidence and resilience? Join us as we break down the science, strategies, and real life insights that make a lasting difference. Parenting, like so many other things we've talked about, is a journey. But when does it actually start?
Well, ideally, parenting starts in utero, or sometimes even before. The environment in which a baby physically grows is going to be incredibly important to it throughout its entire life. And the mother provides that environment through her diet and her habits, whether she's a smoker, whether she uses alcohol or drugs, and even if she gets the right and enough kind of exercise, and even the environment around herself. So if a mom lives in a high stress environment, she can make an abundance of cortisol, which in turn can make her baby highly sensitive to cortisol in their own lives.
That's fascinating because we've talked about how stress impacts our own physical health. But what you're saying is that stress during pregnancy can actually have long term effects on a child's stress response.
Oh, absolutely. And there's also some research that suggests that the maternal grandmother's stress can be encoded on mom's embryonic little eggs and then transferred to the new baby. And that dad's stress can be encoded via the sperm also to the baby. So, a healthy diet, appropriate exercise, and a peaceful, loving environment during gestation and the first 3 years of life is the optimum hope.
So it's really about setting the foundation early. And now we know, like you said, that the first 3 years are crucial for social and emotional development. But what's happening during those 3 years?
Well, that is a great question because those years really are crucial for social and emotional development. These years are when the child develops a secure attachment style that will help them then make and keep stable relationships throughout their lives. So let's just break it down what is going on during those first 3 years. 0 to 4 weeks, believe it or not, trust and safety begins to be established as the baby's needs are met through a caregiver. Now, babies we know are so helpless and they have to depend on somebody else for all their needs, not just physical, but emotional as well. They don't have something we call object permanence yet. A baby has what we call concrete thinking. So if something isn't in sight, it doesn't exist. It's totally gone. And of course, they still feel symbiotic with their mom. They've spent the first 9 months of their existence attached to her, hearing her heartbeat, hearing her voice, feeling the warmth of the womb. Um, and so they need to be held, touched, and talked to so that they're reassured that the parents are still there. Now, at 4 to 20 weeks, this is also an important stage because this is what we call the falling in love stage. as the baby starts to smile and coo and to initiate positive interactions with the parents. They can begin to self soothe with their fingers or a pacifier. But this stage is about learning to connect socially. At 5 to 10 months, then the baby begins to distinguish themselves as different from the parent. Usually, we're holding the baby up to the mirror and they see us and they see themselves, and we say, "Oh, who's that? Who's that?" And they also start to recognize that strangers are not the parent. They begin to explore their environment through their vision and touch, but from the safety of their parent's lap. And they can become really anxious when the parent isn't present. So it's important at this stage to correct and set boundaries with the child in a really gentle and loving way, to play with them. That play and stimulation with the child is very important at this point. Now, at 9 to 12 months, their ability to delay gratification starts to increase a little bit. They can self soothe with a blankie or a teddy bear, kind of like a transitional object when you're putting them down for a nap. 12 to 18 months, all of a sudden, this object permanence begins. The child can explore and then come back. They realize, where they left mom or the parent. They can come back to the parent for hugs and comfort and refueling. And then parents can start to firmly and gently correct or redirect their child's behaviors. This is also where they learn to walk usually or start to say a few words. And we clap for them and they're the center of attention and they start to feel joy at their achievements and feel like that they have value. At 15 to 22 months, the child can feel real anxiety as they are perceiving themselves as separate from the parent. And so they try to woo the parent back into that symbiosis state. They'll shadow the parent or initiate a game of hide and seek. So I had an interesting experiment with a foster mom once. I asked her to just sit on the sofa with her little 15 to 18-month-old girl and just keep a pencil and paper beside her. And every time this little one tried to connect with her, to just put a hashtag on this piece of paper. And that might look like she looked at mom, or she spoke to mom, or she brought something to mom, or, crawled up in her lap. It could have been a lot of things. But at the end of that hour, the mom had over 100 hashtags on that piece of paper.
Wow.
And the sciences, the studies that we've done, we've found that the best moms miss 70% of a baby's attempts at connection. We get busy, right? We're busy with cooking dinner or another child that we have to attend to or laundry. And so we do miss about 70% of their attempts. But the good moms are at least catching 30% of those attempts by the baby. But now when we look at the phones that we have right now, and you can get lost in an hour on Facebook or some of these social media sites,
Oh, yeah.
and you've missed over 100 attempts by your little toddler to connect. Maybe parents who have substance abuse and who are incapacitated or stoned in some way, of course they're going to miss a lot of those cues, if not all of them. So a child's anxiety can increase with that separateness. They can start to become a little clingy. And that's also when these negative behaviors that they start to exhibit in order to try to coerce the parent's attention. So a good parent takes those negative behaviors and provides firm and gentle corrections that need to be in place. So at 21 to 36 months, then that sense of separateness is complete. They do have object permanence. They realize you are you and they are they. And the child already has developed a full range of emotions, and they can have longer periods of independent play if they're securely attached.
That's such an insightful breakdown. And it really does bring to light the need to make those connections. And as you were talking about, especially that stage of 15 to 22 months, and how often you can see how nature and this natural developmental process has already built in um, I think an organic way to develop because you said the best moms, that are probably turning out functional young adolescent children, they're missing 70%. And perhaps, there's a portion of that that is also necessary for the child to really develop some of that independence. But how crucial is it that we are still making sure that we are making those 30%, at least that 30% of those connections. Um, it sounds like if parents are meeting the needs at each stage, then overall their child is more likely to develop a secure attachment that will allow them to trust other people and build relationships themselves. So let's just maybe dive into what happens if these needs aren't met.
Well, if a parent is what we'll call passive, they're not available to the child or they reject the child, a child can develop an avoidant attachment style. And that's one that avoids closeness or emotional attachment with others. And we start to see some personality disorders, dependent personality disorder, perfectionism, OCD, or avoidant personality disorders. Um, and if the parent is very authoritarian and these parents are inconsistent or intrusive, the child learns to not depend on that parent for attunement of any kind. And the personality disorders that we see that result from these kinds of attachments are antisocial personality disorders, borderline personality disorder, or narcissistic personality disorders. And then, of course, we have very neglectful parents. Parents' behavior is a source of disorientation or terror, and it can lead to something we call a disorganized attachment style, in which the person has difficulty regulating their emotions and their social communications. The personality disorders that are common in this kind of a dysfunctional attachment is the paranoid personality disorder or a schizoid.
That makes sense. What are some of the signs then to look for in children as they're developing signs of attachment disorders?
Well, working in a school like you do, I'm sure you see a lot of kids with a lot of different personality styles. So, as we take a look at some key indicators here, the number one is the lack of ability to give or receive affection. They have real trust issues. They don't like being touched. They don't like confiding in anybody. Number two is destructive behavior toward themselves or others or things. Three, cruelty to others or animals. They seem to have a lack of conscience. Four, manipulative behavior. They talk to control. They are very phony and their communications or dishonest. Number five, they're into stealing, hoarding, lack of impulse control. Number six, a lot of these kids have learning disabilities, or even a refusal to learn because they lack cause and effect thinking. And if you see a child, number seven, that has a lack of long term childhood friends, I mean, they're just not able to make or keep friends. Number eight, they'll seldom look you in the eye. Number nine, a lot of them have a preoccupation with fire, blood, and gore. And number 10, just crazy lying. So in the United States, the estimated average of the population is 50 to 60% that enjoys a secure attachment style. And that means the remaining 40 to 50%, depending on what the real number is, have what we call an insecure attachment style. The really frightening thing, I think, to me as a mental health person is that the percentage has changed downward for secure attachments in the last decade. About 10 years ago, it was 65%, and now we're looking at 50 to 60%.
Wow. I mean, yeah, that's absolutely concerning. And it seems like parenting styles play a very huge role in shaping a child's future. But I think the thought that's coming to my mind is over time, the quote unquote acceptable parenting style, socially speaking, has also evolved. So, can you walk us through the different parenting types?
Okay. So, if we look back in history, probably before my parents' time, even, I think probably the most common type of parenting was the authoritarian, or what we term the drill sergeant, very controlling, rigid, high expectations, demanding, using harsh words, relying on punishments to keep the child in line. But the message to the child, the one that they receive, is that they're not capable. And more recently, we've come up with these passive parents. I think the term we use now is helicopter. They overprotect the child. They take on the child's responsibilities. They make all the decisions and they provide no structure. A lot of times they use guilt as the enforcer. But the message to the child, the one that they receive, is that they are weak.
Hmm.
Now, a dismissive parent, these are the parents who disregard, ignore, or trivialize their children and their emotions. And they just pacify them with treats or things. But the message the child is receiving is that they're not very important. Seems to be the most successful type of parenting is what we call the authoritative parent, or in modern terms, we call them the consultant parent. And these are the parents who actually counsel with the child on the decisions. They help them explore options when a decision needs to be made. They model the behavior themselves. And they use positive reinforcement for behaviors. They rely on that more than the negative. And they also allow the child to experience natural consequences. And the message that the child raised like this with this relationship is, hey, you can do this.
So, authoritative parenting really is the ideal balance, of I think all of those natural maybe parenting tendencies, and again creating that structure and flexibility, um, as you go through the parenting journey. Justin and I were talking the other day, and he said, how he had read somewhere something that just kind of hit him, and it was that 90% of our time in knowing our children will be with them as adults. That the first 18 years is actually such a small part of their life. And so I think what that does is it puts into perspective that our job as parents is to help raise healthy, capable, confident, kind adults. And I think that's what, as you've described, the authoritative parent, or, the consultant parent, that's really an excellent job description, is to help them on their journey to becoming adults. So, what else does a child need to become a healthy adult?
Well, a securely attached child really needs three things to become that securely attached, emotionally healthy adult. First and foremost, of course, is the healthy emotional relationship with an adult that is based on respect and affection. Number two, children need a school that is a nurturing but a safe place for learning. And number three, and this might be controversial to some people, but a community of faith that teaches them moral values and principles. Because we need to instill in our children the confidence in their own abilities and an intentionality that their life is valuable. They need to develop self control and they need to have the ability to communicate and to cooperate with others. So we do this by using positives, by reinforcing good behaviors when they occur, instead of waiting for a negative behavior and administer punishment. We do this by investing ourselves in them, by spending time with our children to ensure them that they're worthy of our love and admiration. And we validate their feelings, positive and negative. Most importantly, we have to lead by example and not by force or coercion. And we, as the adults, set those firm and consistent boundaries that have defined that have defined consequences that are designed to fit the offense.
I've worked with children of all ages and from all different environments, and it has helped shape my perspective with parenting and something that I do to help me keep, confidence for my kids at the forefront of my mind, is a couple of things just, off the top of my head. Number one, not to be easily offended by the things that my children do or say, right? I try to stay calm. And I'm not implying that there isn't a need for redirection. There absolutely is. But remember that children, again, at all stages, at all ages, they're expressing their emotions with the tools that they have at the time. And often it's what's been taught or modeled to them. So when they blurt out, I hate you, or this is stupid, right? It's how we respond or redirect that will actually make the difference in how they respond to a similar situation in the future. And the other thing that I just always try to, you know, not only keep at the forefront of my mind, but when I'm working with adults in an educational setting, is I remind them to be the adult in the room. Pause during moments of high emotion because adults are human too. So it's not like we're immune to feeling reactive after a child does something. But to keep the perspective that we have an opportunity to help walk the child through that emotional experience that they're having. Another thing that I heard the other day that was really powerful to me was, some a therapist on social media was just sharing that she expresses to her children that it is not their job to make her happy. And I thought that that was really poignant because as adults, like I said, we're going to have emotions. We're walking through life. We're still figuring things out. At all ages, we're always still figuring things out. But it's also very natural for a child to want to have their parent be happy. They can't truly understand the complexities of what the adult world, is going through. Um, but your children are looking to you for guidance. They're looking to you for security. They're looking to you for reassurance. And it's not their job to do that for us, right? So let me ask you this. What role does emotional intelligence play in parenting? And how can parents develop it for themselves and their children?
Well, that is a really good question. Emotional intelligence fundamentally is just being able to recognize emotions in ourselves and others and being able to communicate those emotions in a clear and a kind of a healthy way. So we talked before about how most children only recognize happy, sad, and mad. And children also tend to be very egocentric. So it is up to us as parents to help them become aware of the many emotions that all human beings experience and how our behaviors create emotions in others. John Gottman is one of my heroes. He's a marriage and family guru, but he's written a book called Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child. So he calls this kind of parenting emotion coaching. And he contends that emotionally coached children have better physical health. They tend to score higher academically. They tend to get along better with their peers and have fewer behavior problems. And they're less prone to acts of violence. So, as parents, are we modeling good emotional intelligence and helping to cultivate that skill in our children? Do we control our own emotions? Do we explain emotions to our children when they're acting out or taking things away from another child? Um, we can help them learn empathy as we show empathy for them when they become out of emotional control. We can help them regulate their own emotions and be mindful of how improper behaviors can hurt others. Just putting your arm around them, you're going to give them some oxytocin that can help and calm them down. So there really is no substitute for being a great mentor in teaching emotional regulation and emotional intelligence because it's an important skill that they'll need throughout their life.
So let's shift a little and get to another necessity, not just emotional intelligence and parenting, but also discipline. Discipline is a necessary component of parenting sometimes. So, what is the best approach?
Well, you're right on there. Discipline is a necessary parenting responsibility. As parents, we can't shun our responsibility to teach our children how to control their emotions and their behavior. So in social settings, each of us have to learn our own boundaries and respect that other people have boundaries that we're not supposed to invade. So here are the 7 steps recommended by the Strengthening Families program. Number 1, to teach the behaviors that you want the child to use in a given situation. And decide on the negative consequences that will follow any negative behavior. You have to give them clear directions, and you have to remain calm. It's also a good idea to give them a warning cue when you start to see that behavior develop. And then I think this one's a hard one for a lot of parents. You have to be consistent in giving the consequence. You can't just let them off the hook all the time or, change your course in the midstream there. You have to be consistent in giving the consequence that they already knew was in place. But then after the consequence, there needs to be a time of coming together again where that you make sure that the child knows that they are loved. That despite the fact that, you had the altercation, they misbehaved and you administered the consequence, they are still valuable and they are still loved. So if we're taking the time to do that emotional intelligence mentoring, we'll also be explaining the why of what we're requiring of them.
So, then what are some small everyday habits that parents can practice to strengthen their connection with their child?
Well, my best advice is to give your child the same respect that you would give any other adult. You need to listen to them. Don't talk down to them. Recognize from their behavior when they need your help in understanding something. Be consistent in love and discipline, but be approachable. If you can't be readily available at the moment, just Set a time when you can be. Make sure that your child knows that they're as important to you, if not more so, than anything else in your life. Lead with love and patience. Never push, coerce, or manipulate them because they will learn to do the same. And don't be afraid to apologize to them if you lose your temper or react too sharply. Because the honest truth is that our children will more than likely mirror the behavior that they learn from us. Training up a child begins with training up ourselves to be the person that we hope that they will become.
That brings to mind a situation that I've often encountered with my own children. I've always worked in schools, and so my kids essentially have come to work with me. Um, and it's very normal, but often after school and after work, as we're walking from the school to the parking lot to get in the car and head home, a typical response from a child at the end of their day is to share everything with their parent, that went on. They're so excited, right? And that's a good connection that I want my children to try to make with me. But from a very early time, I would have the conversation if I was not ready to actually hear what was going on because I was still processing my workday or I had still yet another task that I needed to get completed, once I got home or whatever it was. I would look at and often it was my youngest, my daughter, and I would say, "Is this a story that you really want me to hear?" And she would say, "Yeah." I'd say, "Well, then I need for you to give me a moment until I am in a place where I can actually listen and hear because I do want to hear all about your day." And I would reassure, "I want to hear everything that you have to tell me. But right now, I'm just not in that place. So can you wait 10 or 15 minutes until we get home and then we can sit down and I'll put everything to the side and we can sit and have that conversation." And I only had to do that about 1,000 times because it was every day. But what it has yielded, the product that I have now in a teenager and teenagers is I have my children actually ask me the question, "Mom, are you in a place where I can talk to you about something that happened today?" And then if I am, it's yes, absolutely. Or you know what? Hey, give me just a few minutes. And then yes, I will be. And I think what we've established through this exchange over many years and many times practicing is that they understand number one, I do want to hear. I do want to hear about their day, but I also want to make sure that it's a meaningful connection time. Um, so, how can parents encourage critical thinking, resilience, other life skills? Hopefully, what this has taught my children is some patience because instant gratification is so common. And it's just, but it's not the reality that I would have for them to have as an expectation, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And again, this great authoritarian parent does this by taking time. And I know that's a hard word in our world today because we're all so busy. But taking the time to help their child learn how to make independent decisions. And they take the time to explore options with their child. And this starts very young. I have one of our sons when he was just like 2.5 or 3 years old, and uh, he was adamant that he got to pick out his clothes. And so, I would give him choices. I would say, "Do you want the blue shirt today or the green shirt?" And that way he had a little choice to make. Or I would ask the kids at lunch, "Would you like your sandwich cut in triangles or squares today?" Um, and you start very early with giving them opportunities to make choices and to feel like they have a voice. And then, of course, it grows into the teenage years. And you have a teenager deciding whether or not to spend all their money on a game or clothes or makeup or whatever it is. versus saving that for something that they're some bigger ticket item that they want. And sometimes we have to let them make those choices and face the natural consequences. They spend all their money on the game, and then, down the road, they're still not able to buy that big ticket item. So those natural consequences have to emerge in their life, good or bad. But I will interject here that, of course, as a parent, we never allow them to make a dangerous choice. But parents should only pull the veto card when those consequences are extreme or dangerous, because the ability to make good choices will affect them for the rest of their lives. And we really only have a few formative years to help them to learn how to make good choices.
And parenting is definitely a journey. Having the right tools can make a world of difference. I think one of the biggest takeaways in what we've discussed so much is that parenting is about connection. Um, and that connection also can be teaching opportunities. The more intentional we are about building trust and fostering independence, the better equipped that our kids are going to be to navigate the world. As we come to a close today, let's pinpoint the most crucial points from our conversation and consider how they apply to our daily lives. Today, we highlighted the profound impact of early childhood experiences on emotional development, attachment, and future relationships. We explored how stress, parenting styles, and even small daily interactions shape a child's sense of security and self worth. The key takeaway? Well, parenting isn't about perfection, it's about intentionality, building trust, fostering independence, and modeling respect to create the foundation for a child's lifelong success. Whether through secure attachment, thoughtful discipline, or mindful communication, every small effort makes a difference. In our next episode, we're going to explore the topic of our family environments, how our experiences in those environments shape our views on life and our later well being. If you'd like to learn more about this podcast, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts or suggest topics for future episodes through our website or social media. Your input helps shape the conversation and makes perspective and potential even more impactful. We're Gwen and Abby, and you've been listening to Perspective and Potential. Until next time, keep exploring new perspectives, and remember that every small change can lead to something big. Food for thought. Bon appetit.
Bon appetit.